Moving on now, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention tells us that zoonotic diseases are pathogens that can be spread from animals to humans. The CDC reported outbreaks back in 2017, causing over 1,500 illnesses and at least 3 deaths. There are some of the most commonly observed diseases following contact with young calves. And for more on this story, we will turn things over to Market Journal's Bill Dodd.
A zoonotic disease is classified as a disease that can be transmitted from animals to humans or vice versa. While there are a plethora of zoonotic diseases to be on the lookout for, there are a few that should garner a bit more vigilance from everyday cattle producers. At the top of that list is cryptosporidiosis and rabies.
I think of the zoonotic diseases, I think 40% was the statistic I put in there. That was cryptosporidiosis, so we know that that's just a very contagious high number that's there. Again, rabies, even though it's rare, we're seeing that a lot more commonly in cattle. And you only know if it's there if you're testing it, and the only way to test it is actually having a dead animal and sending in brain tissue. So there's potential for a lot more that could be out there that we just don't see, but we know that we are having it come through our diagnostic labs, and it's just something we need to be really aware of.
While cases of rabies in humans in the United States are rare, it's not uncommon to diagnose the virus in cattle. In fact, according to the CDC, in the year 2020 there were more rabies-positive diagnoses in cattle than in dogs. While clinical signs can vary greatly, rabies should be a consideration with any abnormal behavior, such as lameness, difficulty swallowing, and unusual bellowing.
I mean, there is a potential for a calf having a rabies issue. So if the cow was a rabies positive cow and she's nursing a calf, then that calf is considered positive as well. And vice versa, if a calf is positive for rabies, the cow that it was nursing on is also considered positive for rabies. And even though it's rare in cattle, it's actually more common than I think that we see. And so rabies is spread by mammals, so it's a virus that can affect mammals that go around. And in this area, it's going to usually be a skunk or a raccoon. And cattle are really curious, and especially young calves. So if it goes up to a skunk and the skunk bites it and it is a rabid skunk, then that's a potential for the disease spread. So because it is a 100% fatal condition, this is why we need to really educate ourselves about it, because even though it is 100% fatal, it's almost 100% preventative. So there is a vaccine that's available, and even though it's probably not economical or practical to vaccinate your entire herd for rabies, but you can vaccinate cattle that maybe are you're high risk of being around them. So your show stocks or a valuable animal that you basically handle daily.
Another disease to be on the lookout for is cryptosporidiosis, or more commonly referred to as crypto. This common disease can cause severe watery movements in cattle and humans alike. Infected calves will range from 1 to 4 weeks of age and will exhibit symptoms including lethargy, weakness, and diarrhea.
Cryptosporidium it's a protozoa, so basically think of it like a little parasite. It lives in the environment, so depending on where you calve, especially if you're calving in a dry lot situation, high concentration, it can potentially be in there for long term. So there's a chance for those calves to pick that up year after year. They pick it up from the dirt, the soil, it replicates in the intestinal tract, and then they will shed them out in their manure, so in the feces. And it's extremely contagious. So if you're handling an animal that is infected with cryptosporidiosis, then you have the potential to get that parasite in yourself, and you get the same symptoms that the calf had. And it's passed fecal to oral, meaning you may not know that you have that parasite on your hand, and somehow it gets into your system too. So things that we may not think about is applying chapstick or using chewing tobacco. So if you've been around some of those animals, anytime that you're touching your face or you have that potential to spread, it's just using good biosecurity methods. So especially now if it's branding season and we're really getting around those calves and processing them, it becomes kind of a social event. There may be food, there may be drinks that are there. Just be really cautious about washing your hands and protecting yourself by taking your boots off or changing your clothes so that you're not passing that down to susceptible humans.
As if viral and parasitic infections don't seem bad enough, there are also bacterial infections to be on the lookout for as well. E. coli and Salmonella are two common bacterial infections that could lead to discomfort for you and your herd.
So E. coli, Salmonella, we're talking about bacteria now that can happen. Usually E. coli in calves is going to be those really newborn babies. Usually day 5 and younger. E. coli can cause the diarrhea. It also can cause, maybe you might see some blood in the feces. You might, a lot of times it can become septic, which means it gets into their bloodstream. And Salmonella falls in the same category too. So the only thing about Salmonella that's different is that it affects all age range of cattle. So it can be from a newborn all the way to an adult. And the other thing is Salmonella sometimes does not show clinical signs in cattle. So they may be carriers and shedding it and we don't know. So again, that's just another time to reinforce the fact that anytime you're handling animals, make sure that you're just being extra aware of washing your hands and you know, keeping your boots clean and your clothes so you're not transporting that into a living area.
Biosecurity is paramount to preventing the spread of disease in both animals and people. It is important to keep in mind that zoonotic diseases can be prevented with proper protection. When treating sick calves, it would be prudent to consider an isolation area for treating them. While people can be susceptible to these diseases, it's important to keep in mind that children, the elderly, and immunocompromised individuals are at a higher risk of infection. Reporting for Market Journal, I'm Bill Dodd.